How you been, man? You good?
Yeah.
My dad said he got all those cars that you sent him up there too, man. We appreciate you very much.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Nah, no problem. So we'll just start it off. Mr. Dan, I got to meet you down in South Carolina, Greensville to be exact. You gave me the great, tour, personal tour. We also had some friends from West Virginia that came in and went along with us. Excellent condition. The house looks great. The museum, like I said, looks great. I think the awesome touches of like the cleats leading up to the door. There's a lot of beautiful things about it, but I'm not going to go into it because I want people to go down there and visit it. But if you could you give me a little bit about your background before we get into the questions I have about this? Because it's intriguing to hear your story. I know it, but I would like the other people to hear it. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, so I grew up in Chicago, White Sox fan all my life, and just have always loved baseball history. From the time I was a little kid, just love learning about the history of the sport. Obviously, when you're a White Sox fan, one of the first things you learn about as you're digging into their franchise's history is the 1919 World Series and the Black Sox scandal. So I've known about Joe Jackson since I was a very little kid. I was born in November of '86, and so 2 years later, 1988, the movie 8 Men Out came out, and the next year after that, 1989, Field of Dreams came out. So basically my entire childhood was just filled with memories of watching those two movies. Being in Chicago, we were only about 3 hours away from the Field of Dreams movie site in Dyersville, Iowa. So I've played on that field many times growing up. We'd take road trips to go check it out and hang out there, and lots of great memories from that place as well. So Shoeless Joe's always kind of been in my life, a part of my life, whether directly or indirectly, for as long as I can remember. About 13 years ago, my parents retired and moved to Travelers Rest, South Carolina, which is just outside of Greenville. And after they moved, I went to go visit them, and it was right after the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum had just opened. They opened June of 2008. So we're like, all right, this sounds like a great place. Let's go check it out. And we loved it. It just happened to be right place, right time. It was the week leading up to the first ever vintage baseball game between the Ty Cobb Museum and the Joe Jackson Museum. And the curator of the Shoeless Joe Museum asked me if I wanted to play in the game. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be in town, so why not? Let's check it out. And it was just an awesome event. We had descendants from both Ty Cobb and Joe Jackson either playing in the game or attending the game. There were historians and experts and researchers from all over the country who were at that game. So it just, felt like a place I needed to be every year. So I made that my trip every single year to go visit my parents was based around when that vintage game was going to be. And at this point, I'm the only player who has been at every single game and played in every single game. So we've been doing it since 2009, and we just had our most recent game the day before Halloween this year. So it's been a cool tradition. And after 10 years of doing that, the original curator of the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum was getting ready to retire. And since the board of directors had known me and my passion and my knowledge of Joe Jackson for over a decade at that point, they asked if I wanted to come take over and run the museum full time. So I said, yeah, and that's what I'm doing now.
And history is made, as they say. It's a great choice, man. Can I ask you a question about the game? What'd you bet? What'd you bet the last game you guys played?
Like where in the batting order did I bet?
No. You're Shoeless. I mean, you represent Shoeless. So did you go 1 for 2, 3 for 4, 2 for 4? Hopefully no zero.
Oh, yeah. I actually don't know what I did that game because we played a doubleheader. So there were, I think, probably 7 or 8 at bats. But yeah, I was on base more often than not. Let's put it that way.
No, that's awesome. And then you and I were also talking about the vintage game. So you guys do it like all the original, baseball leagues, like the striker and everything like that, correct? Like it's all throwback, right?
Yeah, we play with the old equipment. We don't use gloves. We don't wear cleats. We use the big heavy wooden bats. We use a baseball that's accurate to what they used back in the 1860s. So it's a little bit bigger, a little bit softer than a modern baseball. A modern ball is 9 inches in diameter. The 1860s style ball is about 9 3/4. So it's a little bit bigger. The rules are slightly different. So the fielders, first base, second base, and third base have to stand within a foot of the bag. The only person who's allowed to roam is the shortstop. They called it the short scout back then. And that person can stand anywhere he wants, or he or she wants, on the infield, but that leaves one side of the infield completely open. So the strategy really when you're playing those games is kind of just put the ball where the fielders aren't standing. And as long as you can hit a ground ball through the opposite field, or wherever the hole is in the infield, you're going to get on base. And so as a veteran of these games, that has been a big strategy. So yeah, that's another thing about those games is that if you catch the ball on one bounce, the batter is still out. So that creates some chaos on the base path, because once the ball hits the ground, it's a live ball for the runners, so the runner can go, but the batter, if it's caught on a fly, is out. So a lot of people think that, all right, I hit a line drive, one hopper to the left fielder, and he catches it on a bounce. Well, if the batter's out, then the runner thinks, all right, well, I need to go back to the bag and tag up, but that's not the case. So, again, it is an advantage to have played in this game more than one time, because you know those rules, and you can just, it becomes instinct at that point, where if you've never played in the game, your baseball instincts kick in, and like I said, it just creates some chaos out there. So it's cool. It's a really fun event. Everybody who comes to watch it always has a good time, and we're trying to get as many people involved in playing the game as possible. So check us out on our website. We've got a whole section called Vintage Games, where you can see pictures and learn the rules from the previous years that we've played.
Oh, no, that's awesome, man. I know if I ever came to play, you guys probably had to put the Benny Hill music on, especially with all the different rule changes and everything like that. But that's definitely an interesting and a great thing, and it sounds like a lot of fun. I got to see the pictures and everything like that, and you guys look really good. Did you wear a Joe Jackson jersey? Do you wear this being the real Jersey King? See, my big thing, Mr. Dan, we didn't really get a time to chop it up like that, but of course I love sports. Of course I love baseball, right? But for me, the extra kicker that does it with the sport of baseball is the history behind it. So it's always like, I got a Ted Williams jersey, but I got a certain year that he did a certain thing in it, right? I got a Cal Ripken Mitchell and Ness jersey, junior jersey, but it's the year that he broke the streak. It's always about the date, the time, the meaning, the reasoning. When you go there, do you just show up as is, like you're going to the gym, or do you deck down to the nines, as they would say, and really come out in fashionable form? And the reason I'm asking is because there's a lot of people. I moved to Florida about 2 years ago. There's a gigantic vintage league down here. These guys actually play all the time. I mean, it's going on, so forth. So I'm just interested. Do you guys, when you go to the games, do you guys deck down, or is it just show as you come?
No, we just redesigned our quote unquote uniforms this year for the first time. Before we were just kind of wearing like a vest that said Shoeless Joe on it, but it didn't really look vintage. It wasn't quite modern either. So it was just never really inspiring uniform. But this year we had a new design that looks much more accurate to the 1860s style uniforms that they wore, with a big crest on the chest that said SJ for Shoeless Joe. We just did them as a screen printed T-shirt because we don't have the funds yet as a 501c3 non-for-profit to do the full decked out like wool uniforms with real stitching and accurate materials and things like that. Hopefully next year or the year after we'll have that in our budget to really go full out. But at least design wise, we made it look accurate this year. And everybody on the team wears black pants. We all wear the same hats. So we definitely do look like a team out there. It's not just a bunch of guys showing up and, wearing their workout clothes.
No, that's awesome, man. Because I already know you, like from meeting you and everything. I already know you are a very detail oriented person, and that's a great thing. Like I said, the museum down there is in great hands with you. Now, also, I'm very happy and I'm very thankful that you would take this time again for me. We just tried to do the Zoom, which I'm not the best technical person, so I appreciate you riding with me. So we'll do this not really quick, but I don't want to hold up too much of your time. I'm going to play a little myth or fact with you. It's only 2 questions, really. Say it ain't so, Joe. Everyone always says that this is the big thing. He came out of the courtroom after the trial and everything, which I'm going to touch on you in a second as well. True or false? Say it ain't so, Joe. Did that really happen?
Yeah, that never happened. The story started in 1921. There was a newspaper writer in Chicago named Charlie Owens who claimed he was standing outside the courtroom during the Black Sox trial and saw a little boy waiting outside for Joe Jackson to walk out. And when he saw Joe come out, he looked up at him and said, say it ain't so, Joe. Like, tell me you didn't bet on these games. And Joe Jackson himself said that story never happened. He knew that the writer created it because it was a cute story and that it would sell papers. He understood why that happened, but it never actually happened. So, yeah, that's a famous story that has been told over and over and over. And you've seen it in the movie 8 Men Out and all sorts of references to that in popular culture, to the point where that phrase, say it ain't so, has become just part of our daily lexicon. And people don't even really realize that they are referencing Joe Jackson when they say it, but they certainly are.
Yeah, they have a lot of people have no clue, and that is definitely crazy. So the next one, a reporter supposedly was watching a game, saw the gentleman, Joe Jeffrey, hit I think it was a double or a triple. He was running around, and he looked, and he said, he ain't had no shoes on. That shoeless bastard got us again. Is that true or false, how he came across the name Shoeless Joe Jackson?
That's not quite what happened. So Joe got that nickname June 6, 1908. He was playing for a minor league team in Greenville called the Greenville Spinners. He knew at the end of the season he was going to get called up to play for the major leagues in the Philadelphia Athletics. So he bought a new pair of cleats, hoping that by the time he did get called up, those cleats would be broken in, and it looked like he'd belong when he'd get up to the big leagues. So the first time he wore those shoes, though, obviously they're not broken in yet. They're a brand new pair of leather shoes from 1908. So the first game he wore them, June 6th that summer, they were wearing blisters on his feet. So by the 5th inning of the game, he goes to his coach, Tommy Stouch, and asks if he could sit the rest of the game. And the coach was like, no, you're my best player. You cannot sit the rest of the game.
Right.
Figure it out. Get out there. And so Joe took his shoes off and played the rest of the game in just his socks. And nobody really noticed until the bottom of the 7th inning. Joe came up to the plate with his team down 1, and he hit the longest home run in the history of the stadium. So as he's rounding third base on his home run trot, one of the visiting fans who was sitting on that side of the field noticed Joe didn't have shoes on and stood up and yelled, "You shoeless son of a gun." Didn't quite say gun, but right. That's where that name comes from. There was a newspaper writer in the stands that day named Scoop Latimer who wrote for the Greenville News for like 55 years, and he heard it and put it in the paper the next day. And from that point forward, Joe Jackson's been known as Shoeless Joe. And he actually hated that nickname because he understood the connotation. He knew it made him sound like he was some country bumpkin who couldn't afford shoes, but that was the opposite of what was the case. He just bought a brand new pair of shoes because he's going to the major leagues in 2 months. So for the rest of his life off the field, he made it a point to dress impeccably well because he didn't want people to think of him as Shoeless Joe. He wanted people to just think of him as Joe Jackson. Right.
And that's one thing that you and I talked about too. He took very much pride in that, and also the understanding of like your presence and your what precedes you, like what people think of you. It was huge, especially back then. Now with Twitter and everything like that, you can put every little thought that you have in the world, but you only really have that first impression. And I'm happy that you could clear that up. I was going to go next to did he like it, the name, but obviously you answered that question as well for us too. Now,
yeah. So when we have pictures of Joe in the museum, when he's not in a baseball uniform, he's always wearing a really nice suit, wearing nice shoes. He liked to drive big, nice cars. We found a newspaper advertisement from the late 1940s of a guy in Greenville, like a used car salesman, trying to sell a used car. And he makes specific mention that the car previously belonged to Joe Jackson. And that was not because Joe was this famous celebrity and he wanted to sell it based on the name. It was because everybody in Greenville knew how good of care Joe kept of his cars. So if you were buying his old car, you were getting a great car. And that's the type of person Joe was. He was a proud man, a great businessman, and he was not some, penniless, ashamed person at the end of his life. A lot of people have kind of made that assumption that, Okay, well, if he didn't know how to read and write and he got kicked out of baseball, which was probably the only thing he ever knew, then how was he going to make money? Well, that wasn't the case. He owned businesses all throughout his life. His wife was literate, so she was the one who ran the books at all the businesses that they owned. And they were very successful financially, both on and off the field.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that because after he left, so there's a lot of people don't know it about too. 1919, everyone thinks that they were just kicked out right after then. A lot of people don't know that 1920 they still played. They've played the following season, and then after that, starting in 21, I remember you and I were talking about he played for a number of years down there, right? I actually came down with a Ebbets Field Greenville Spinners jersey that he played after his major league career. Could you touch on that? How many years did he play for? Was he barnstorming? Was it just like not minor league teams, but like city teams and everything like that down there? Or could you just give us a little bit of background information on that?
Yeah, he played all over. 1921, he kind of took the year off because all the trial stuff was going on, and he was still hoping to play Major League Baseball. The team got found out basically with a week left to go in the 1920 season. At that point in the year, Joe was batting .382. He was leading the American League in triples, and he had his career high in home runs and RBIs. With a week left to go in the season, Commissioner Landis found out that the Phillies and the Cubs were fixing games towards the end of the 1920 season. So he called all those guys into his office and was basically like, the whole reason I got hired was to stop gambling and stop game fixing from happening. So why are you guys still doing this? He's going to punish them. And the players reacted by asking, how are you going to punish us for these meaningless end of the season games when the White Sox threw the World Series last year and nothing happened to them? And that was really the first time Landis had heard that from a credible source. There were grumblings, from the time the 1919 World Series took place that maybe that series wasn't played on the level, but he'd never really heard it from a credible source until then. So at that point, the 8 players were just suspended from baseball. They weren't banned. So in 1921, Joe and the rest of the guys didn't really play anywhere because they were still hoping that they were going to be able to be reinstated and their suspension would be lifted and they could continue playing Major League Baseball. But in August of 21, they were officially banned for life. So starting in 1922, Joe kind of played under assumed names for a little bit in New Jersey. If you've ever seen the movie 8 Men Out, the last scene kind of gives the implication that for years and years and years, Joe played under fake names, and that's how he kept his career going forever. But that's not really the case. He played under assumed names about a dozen times that we know of, and that's because he was one of the most famous men in America. He had this iconic swing, so if all of a sudden there's this guy calling himself Joe Joseph who pops up in New Jersey, but he looks like Joe Jackson, he swings like Joe Jackson, he fields like Joe Jackson, he throws like Joe Jackson, like everybody knows that's not Joe Joseph, that's Joe Jackson. So that didn't really last super long. And plus, when you're barnstorming, most of the time the way you get paid is you get a percentage of the ticket sales. You get a cut of the gate. And so if you can promote it as Joe Jackson, world's champion natural born hitter and Chicago White Sox star, there's going to be 1,000, people that show up instead of 100 or 10,000 people instead of 1,000, so he knew if you put my name in the paper and promote it as Joe Jackson, that he's going to get a bigger payday. So he wanted his name in the paper. So starting in 1922, he played in New Jersey for a little bit. Then 1923, he played in a town called Americus, Georgia. 24 and 25, he played in a town called Waycross, Georgia. All 3 of those years, 1923, 1924, and 1925, he was the player manager for those 3 teams in Georgia, and his team won the Georgia Little World Series. It was basically like the Georgia State Championship. And in 1925, he turned 38 years old that year. On the season, he batted 121 for 242. He batted exactly 500 as a 38-year-old man on a championship-winning team in a competitive league. This was not, just a bunch of drunk uncles. It was legitimate talent, a bunch of people who were either going to play Major League Baseball or had played Major League Baseball previously in their careers. And you asked how long Joe played. The last year that he played organized baseball was 1937. He was 50 years old. The Ebbets Field flannels jersey that you have is from the 1932 Greenville Spinners.
Correct.
So before that, before 1932, Joe was living in Savannah, Georgia with his wife, Katie. They had a dry cleaning business that was really successful. It was called the Savannah Valet Service. They had at least 2 locations that we know of and at least 20 employees working for them. But in 1932, Joe's mom got sick, and she lived in Greenville. So they sold everything down in Savannah to come back home and take care of her. And when the Greenville Spinners, who was the team that Joe was playing for in 1908 when he got his nickname, that was the team he was playing for when he got discovered by a Major League scout, they find out Joe's back in town in 1932. So they ask him if he wants to suit back up and play with the old ball club. So he says yes. He's 45 at that point, and he played 5 more years after that. He had a younger brother named Jerry, who was a great pitcher. And Joe even said that Jerry was a better ball player than he was. But since his last name was Jackson and it was after the Black Sox scandal, no Major League team wanted to give him a chance because they didn't want the association that came with that. So Jerry was playing for a textile league team here in Greenville called Woodside Mill. And the Woodside Mill owner asked Joe if he wanted to come, back out of retirement and play with his little brother, be the player manager for that team. So Joe said yes in 1937 at the age of 50. So he started his career playing baseball professionally at 13. He was asked to play on the Mill League team, the textile league team at Brandon Mill, and didn't stop till he was 50. He played 37 years of professional baseball, getting paid to play baseball for 37 years. That's insane.
One thing that I can tell, I'll pass on to you, but you probably have already heard this before. Fans of baseball and people that visit the Joe Jackson Museum are thankful to have someone like you, because you're very knowledgeable. You break it down. You don't leave any stone unturned, as they would say. And I'm just happy that part of history has someone like you to explain it and shed light on it. But thank
you very much.
That is amazing. At 38 years old, it makes me feel like I should do about 15 more push-ups when we get off the phone. He's out here hitting bombs, and I'm over here just bombing. So at the end of the day, that's great. Now let me go into a couple things with you. Don't you think this is absurd? You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. He's in the Cleveland Hall of Fame, correct? For, I guess it would be the Indians, which was what the Naps when he played. But he's in the Hall of Fame, correct? For that team.
Yeah, in 1951, the Cleveland Indians decided they were going to create the Cleveland Indians Hall of Fame, and they put it up to a fan vote to decide who were going to be the first 10 guys inducted into that inaugural class. And the fans decided Joe Jackson was going to be one of those guys. Even though he only played about just under 5 full seasons with them, they still thought he was one of the best 10 guys who ever put on a uniform in Cleveland.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Incredible praise, especially when you consider, they had guys like Bob Feller and Napoleon Lajoie and Earl Averill. Like, they had great, great players in their history. Tris Speaker, and the fans were like, yeah, those guys were great, but Joe belongs in that class too. So yeah, he is in that Hall of Fame. He's in a couple other Halls of Fame as well. Not directly associated with Major League Baseball or their teams, but yeah, he's been recognized for sure. And one day he will have a plaque in Cooperstown.
No, I mean with you behind him, I usually don't BS people and say, yeah, you can do that. Don't worry, you'll be able to do it. And knowing in our mind, like, nah, that ain't gonna happen. But it's the energy. So just keep up the good fight. Also, another reason they might have put him in there, best rookie batting average ever in Major League history, right? I mean, that we'll bring up the number 408. He hit 408 as a rookie.
Yeah, his first full season in Major League Baseball was 1911. He had played 5 games at the end of the 1908 season with Philadelphia Athletics, 5 more games at the end of the 1909 season with Philadelphia. Then he was traded to Cleveland. He was basically a September call-up in 1910 where he played 20 games at the end of that season. And he batted .387 in those 20 games, which would have been enough for the Major League batting title, but since he didn't have enough at bats to qualify, Ty Cobb won the title that year. But 1911 was his first full season in Major League Baseball, and he batted .408. He set all sorts of rookie records that year: hits, doubles, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, he had the best rookie season probably in the history of baseball. And a lot of people think that his stretch from 1911 through 1913, those 3 seasons in Cleveland, are at least in the top 10 of 3-year periods in any baseball career in terms of offensive statistics.
Oh yeah, when you look at it, it's amazing too.
Yeah, but you're right about his .408 rookie batting average still being the all-time record for highest average ever by a rookie. That record will probably never be broken. I won't say never for sure, because like a season like last year where it was shortened to however many games, 60 games or whatever they played. You never know if that's going to happen again, and some guy gets hot. So it's possible, but it is very, very unlikely that for over the course of a full season, anybody's going to hit 408 again, let alone a rookie.
Yeah,
but not only does Joe hold the rookie record for batting average, he also holds the highest average for a player in his final season of his career. In 1920, we mentioned that he batted 382, and then he was banned from baseball after that. But 382 is the highest average ever by a player in his full final season as well.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And then he's also fourth after they led, the Negro League statistics and everything like that. Number 4, all-time leading batting average, 356, correct?
Yeah. So Ty Cobb is first overall with 367. Now with the integration of the record books, including the Negro League players, Oscar Charleston has jumped up to second all-time with a 363 batting average. Rogers Hornsby is third with 358, and Joe is fourth now with 356. So yeah, just an all-time great. Guys like Ty Cobb said, Joe was the best natural hitter who ever lived. Babe Ruth said he copied his swing after Joe Jackson. Babe started his career as a pitcher, and when they were going to move him to right field to get his bat in the lineup every day, he decided he was going to pay attention to all the guys he's throwing against, and whoever had the nicest swing, he was going to model his swing after that guy, and he picked Joe Jackson. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you end your career with the 714 home runs, and not only that, but Babe also had a 342 career batting average. Yeah. He's in the top 15 all time.
Yeah.
That's pretty high praise from those guys. Also, 1910, 1911, on Cleveland, Joe was teammates with Cy Young. Cy Young said, and this is, again, Joe's first two years in baseball. Mm-hmm. So he's this kid, unproven, and Cy Young said, if there's a ball that this Jackson can't hit, I haven't found it yet. That's Cy Young. They named the award for the best pitcher after the guy, and he said, Joe Jackson's incredible. So, I mean, you don't get higher praise than those three guys from that time period. So that should give you kind of an idea of just how great Joe Jackson was.
No, that's amazing. And then, when I was at the museum, you and I talked about it too, especially when Cobb called him the best natural hitter. It was even a bigger praise, really, if you dug into the Ty Cobb, the way he would say and mean things, because like you and I discussed, Ty Cobb would explain that he's not a natural hitter. He had to work at it. He had to do this. He had to. So to say that this man is the best natural hitter, he wakes up out of his sleep and he can do that. That is, like you said, top of the line, man. Cy Young saying that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. His first year playing for Philadelphia, he was managed by Connie Mack, right? Now, even though that went sideways, things didn't go right, it wasn't the perfect fit for him. Connie had nothing but good things to say about him too, right? On the field and the attributes, maybe not the dealing with, the transition, but the actual ball player. I mean, if you're getting all this, there's got to be something about you that is spectacular. That's great. And I feel, I don't know, how do you feel, Dan? I feel that the Black Sox scandal, the White Sox scandal that happened in 1990, it just put the worst cloud ever on one of the best, cheerful, uplifting players Major League Baseball has provided us. And a great story as well. Like you said, illiterate, can't read, but brought himself up, stood at the top of the pinnacle of one of these major organizations, these leagues and everything, own a liquor store, 2 dry cleaning owners. I mean, there's just a lot that you can say about this guy, man. And it's amazing. And let me ask you this question. And I'm leading you on a lot because there's just so much going through my mind when hearing you talk, because you got facts, man. As my daughter would say, you spit facts, bro. So that's the best thing about it. Here's this question. I want to ask you this. I was doing some more stat searching, and I want to know what you're learning about Joe and going back and researching. What is the stat that jumped out at you the most? And you just said, damn. I knew he was amazing, but this, I want to hear what you have to say first. Hopefully you don't steal mine, but I want to hear what you have to say first so I can bounce back and bring you that.
Well, yeah, Joe is one of the first, really great 5-tool players in baseball history. And the 5 tools are hitting for average, hitting for power, being a great fielder, being a great thrower, and running the bases, having speed. A lot of people don't realize that he was this really great base runner. In his rookie season, 1911, he stole 41 bases. He batted .408. He had a .468 on-base percentage. he had 41 steals and 45 doubles. Like, as a rookie. Like,
incredible.
That's crazy. He had 5 seasons with 20 or more steals. He ended his career with over 200 steals. So he was a great base runner as well as being a great hitter. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that or have ever thought of that. The other thing that is a notable, not necessarily a statistic, but just a little fact or tidbit.
Mm-hmm.
He had the only home run in the 1919 World Series for either team. And that's something that a lot of people know because it's one of the things that people point to when they say, all right, well, how could he have thrown these games if he had the only home run? And, if the Reds were trying all series long, surely their team would have had a home run too. But like, that's how hard it was to hit home runs back then. But what most people don't realize was that 1919 was the final year of the dead ball era. So Joe's home run in the 1919 World Series was the last home run in the dead ball era.
Wow. See, I'm glad I asked you that question. Because like you said, that's like one of the little tidbits that, once again, Dan, this is why I love baseball. It's just because there's stories behind the stories behind the stories behind the stories. I mean, not to take anything away from football and, but they don't have the minor league systems. They don't have the mill systems. And that's another thing that I need to tell people. When you go down to visit the museum, you need to go to the mill. I got some beautiful drone shots I'll send you too if you want to ever use them.
Awesome.
But one of the great stats that I found out, this is like a 2-hitter right here. No pun intended. 1,772 at bats with 158 strikeouts. It's 9.2% of at bats that he struck out. That's amazing. And then to piggyback on that, he had 158 career strikeouts, but he had 168 career triples. Like you said, a great base runner, like that's not even spoken about when you talk about Joe Jackson.
Yeah, I think your stats are a little bit off. He had 1,772 hits, not at bats.
That's what I meant to say. I'm sorry. I said at bat. I'm sorry.
Closer to 5,000 at bats, just shy of 5,000 career at bats. And I think his strikeout total was about 230, 233, something like that. So still of an incredibly low strikeout percentage. We always talk about how the great hitters in the game, guys like Ted Williams and Ty Cobb and even Babe Ruth, they all struck out more times on average than Joe did. And so most people think of, Ty Cobb as this great contact hitter, or Pete Rose, this great contact hitter, all these singles all throughout their careers. And Joe struck out less often than them. He made contact at a higher rate than those guys. So yeah, you're right in the concept. Just the numbers were not quite right. But yeah, he was an incredible hitter.
Yeah,
that cannot be disputed.
Yeah, that can't be. And like you said, even when you're looking at the stats with some of the names that he's up there with the batting average, you can see the discrepancy of how many extra bases and OPS and everything like that. I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, I got a little bit happy, Dan. I'm sorry about that. When I said it, I said 1,772 at bats. I was like, oh my God, I just botched that one. But no, to bounce back to the 1919 series you were talking about, the last home run and everything like that, I really don't understand when people look at it statistically. The only really thing that you could think of that would implicate him being with the scandal is that he saw how bad everyone else was doing and was just like, I got to make it look like I'm not doing this, which I don't believe that happened, especially when you really do the research and see how he tried to go to Kaminsky. He tried to go to everybody and say, I wasn't with this. And, if you watch 8 Men Out, it makes him look like, they took the money, they took everything like this. But let's talk about it. 1 home run, 12 hits, no errors, 375 average. And how much money did he supposedly accept?
That number varies. There's some people claim that he was offered $20,000 to participate. Some people claim that he was offered 10. We believe that the actual number that he finally wound up with at the end of the series was $5,000. But there's probably never going to be a 100% confirmation on that. But it wasn't handed to him directly from gamblers. He did not want to participate in that World Series. He knew that the fix was in. He wasn't at any of the meetings between the players and the gamblers, but he was still on the team. And he heard these guys talking in the clubhouse, in the hotels, on the trains. He knew what was going on. So he tried to go to Charles Comiskey, the owner of the White Sox, and to Kid Gleason, the manager of the team, and say, I don't even want to play in this series. You know, I hear what these guys are saying. I hear what's going on. I don't want my name associated with this. I want you to just sit me. And if you need to tell the public or the press that you found me drunk, that I'm an alcoholic, and you guys needed to suspend me, you say whatever you need to say, but I'm not playing in the series. And they both said, Joe, you're crazy. Nothing's going to happen. It's going to be fine. Just play. And so he did. And he played great. I mean, you said the statistics. Mm-hmm. He had an incredible series. He had, you know, of the 20 runs that the White Sox scored in the series, he was a part of 11 of them, either scoring or driving them in.
That's crazy.
He was 5 for 12 with runners in scoring position. So a lot of people will claim that, yeah, you know, he had good numbers, but his situational hitting wasn't good. It's like, all right, well, what more did you want him to do? He was 5 for 12 with runners in scoring position. You can't drive in runs if they're not on base.
Yeah. And
he almost batted 500 with runners in scoring position. So the supposition that, you know, he only tried when the games were out of reach. He batted 375 in the series.
I was going to say, what more do you want than that, man? I mean, I don't understand.
If he's only trying half the time and batting 375, then you're suggesting that he would have batted 750 if he was trying all the time. That's insane. That doesn't happen. In 1917, the White Sox won the World Series against the New York Giants, and he batted 304 in that World Series. So he batted 71 points higher in a series he was trying to lose.
Yeah, come on.
Than the series he won. Like, come on. It's nonsense.
And let me ask you this. The 1917 team that won the championship, I was going to save this for the end, but I'm glad that you brought this up. Was that team better than the 1919 team? I'm just saying this statistically and looking back because I'm, you know.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the 1919 team is one of the best baseball teams who ever played.
Right.
You know, they had good power, they had good speed, they had great fielding, they were loaded with pitching. You know, a couple guys were injured towards the end of the year, which made it difficult. You know, Eddie Seacott, their number one starting pitcher, had kind of a dead arm at the end of the season. And there's one of the myths that we have debunked in the past 20 years with all the research that's been done in the Black Sox Scandal Research Committee from SABR, has uncovered the fact that, you know, people assumed all these years, because that's kind of the story that was told in the movie 8 Men Out, in the book 8 Men Out, that Eddie Seacott was promised this great bonus from Charles Comiskey if he won 30 games. And when he got to his 29th win, Comiskey shut him down for the year and said, you can't pitch anymore, because if you get that 30th win, I'm going to have to pay you a bonus. Well, that's not what happened. He did win 29 games that year, and he did sit a lot of the last month of the season, but it's because he had a dead arm. And they knew that they were going to the World Series, so they wanted to save him for the World Series. But they did still pitch him a couple times towards the end of the season. He had multiple chances to win that 30th game. He just pitched poorly in those games. The game that they actually clinched the 1919 American League pennant, Eddie Seacott started that game and didn't win it because he pitched poorly. So they brought in a reliever, and Joe Jackson had the pennant clinching walk-off hit, the first time in American League history that a pennant was clinched with a walk-off. That was Joe Jackson in 1919. So there's all these different myths that have been, perpetuated over the past 100 years about what happened at the Black Sox scandal and what happened that season. That's one of our goals at the museum, is to really educate people about the truth, because so many of the things that people think they believe are based on what they saw in the movies, and that's just not accurate.
Yeah, just a bunch of BS. Because if you, I want to say I looked at it. He had 4 starts, I think, after quote unquote he got put out of commission for the rest of the season. Like you say, he just got shelled. Like that's just what there was today. It was just throwing loaves of bread over there, just hoping someone's going to swing and miss, which they did not swing and miss. So that didn't work out too well for him.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why, he lost a couple games in the World Series, and it was kind of more believable because he didn't pitch well towards the end of the year. So, yeah, he was throwing those games, and that's the real reason they lost those games. But he did, make it look believable. But there was also a guy named Red Faber who was a great pitcher for the White Sox. He got the Spanish flu, as they call it, the influenza from 1918, and he did not pitch during the 1919 World Series. He missed the entire season pretty much. And Ray Schalk, their catcher, who's a Hall of Fame catcher, and by the way, Red Faber is a Hall of Fame pitcher as well. He spent most of his career after the Black Sox scandal. Since he didn't pitch in the series, he wasn't implicated with the rest of the Black Sox. Ray Schalk, to his dying day, said that if Red Faber were healthy for that World Series, the White Sox would have won the series. He won 3 games for the 1917 World Series winning Chicago White Sox in that series. And, if he would have, Ray Schalk, the catcher, said, even if the rest of the team was trying to throw the series, that's how good Red Faber was, that he wouldn't have let them lose the series. So they were a stacked team, top to bottom, great offense, great defense, great pitching, and they just lost it on purpose.
Lost it on purpose. And not to mention too, like, they were found not guilty. They were found not guilty.
Yeah. In the court of law, they were found not guilty, but they absolutely did throw the World Series. Of the 8 players who were banned for life, the 8 men out, as people refer to them, 6 of them actively did throw the World Series and accepted money to do so. Of the 2 that did not, Joe is one of those 2. We mentioned that he wasn't at any of the meetings between the players and the gamblers. He tried his best during the series, but at some point during that 1919 World Series, or at the end of it, we're not exactly sure on the timeline, his teammate, Lefty Williams, the starting pitcher on the White Sox that year, was in on the fix. Joe and Lefty were best friends on and off the field. They were hunting buddies. We've got pictures of the 2 of them going hunting together in North Carolina in the off season. They were roommates on the road, so when the games weren't played in Chicago, they would share a hotel room. Lefty was in on the fix, and at some point, gamblers gave him $10,000 and said, "You keep 5, you give 5 to Joe." And so one night under Joe's hotel room pillow, he put an envelope with $5,000. So Joe had dirty money in his possession, and that's really why he was, quote unquote, guilty of throwing the 1919 World Series. He didn't really throw it, but when you wind up with money that came from gamblers for your team to throw it, and the team throws the series, that doesn't look great.
Unfortunately, they call that guilty by association.
Exactly. So, like I said, of the 8 players who were banned, 6 of them did throw the World Series and accepted money to do so. Joe was one of the guys that didn't. Now you know why he was banned. The other guy was their third baseman, Buck Weaver. The reason he was banned, even though he probably should not have been, is because he was at the meeting before the series started. But he decided, you know what, this isn't who I am. That's not who I want to be. I'm going to try my best in this series, and I'm not going to accept any money. I'm just going to play it straight up. And so he did. But since he never reported his teammates, he didn't want to rat out his buddies. When Landis found out, like we said earlier, the next year, Landis found out that the team had thrown the World Series. Landis decided anybody who threw games or knew about games that were thrown and did nothing to stop it or report it, or anybody who sat in conference with the gamblers or talked about throwing games, anybody who fits into one of those categories, they're banned for life from baseball. So since Buck Weaver knew about it and didn't report it, that's why he was banned. But he and Joe are really the two people on that team who, over the past 100 years, the public has kind of decided they were really unfairly banned, and their names should probably be cleared.
Yeah, I was going to say a victim of circumstance, man. Victim of circumstance. Mr. Dan, I've held you up for 45 minutes. Not going to hold you up any much longer. I appreciate you. Once again, from a person that's came down there and seen that, seen the museum, stepped down there, seen the games, also witnessed how helpful and how, not to say the word accessible, but how easygoing of a person you are. I mean, I went down there. You took your personal time to tell us where the liquor store was. We went by to the grave site. We went to the mill, the ballpark. Great for you, man. And I'm happy that I don't want to say that the museum found you. I mean, I don't want to say that you found the museum. I want to say that the museum found Joe, kind of brought you. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a great thing. And hopefully I can get some more time. We can, maybe later on go to a part 2, talk about his married life, talk about how his wife was one of his biggest supporters and his, helpful backbone, Black Betsy, all that other stuff. But as for right now, we appreciate you. We thank you. You're the best. If you guys have not been down there, you need to go down there. You need to speak with Dan. You need to take the tour. You need to see what it is. You need to buy a membership, a year membership, at least like I did. Get yourself a nice hat, nice pin. I'm upset that we couldn't do the Zoom meeting because I seen you had your hat. I was ready to put my hat on too. We were ready to be stepbrothers, man, like Will Ferrell and them. But I appreciate you, man. Is there any way you can drop and let us know, how to contact you guys? Anyone that wants to go on the website, check it out, and everything like that. Could you give us your information, and I'll make sure I pass it on?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for everything you said. The way I try and run the museum is I love going to baseball museums and on baseball road trips too. I'm a fan of the game, and so I just try and treat people the way that I want to be treated when I walk into some place like that. So yeah, I appreciate when people recognize that, like you. So thank you very much. But just be nice to people. That's the goal, right?
That's it.
If you want to follow us on social media, it's at Shoeless Museum on all platforms. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Shoeless Museum on everything. And our website is shoelessjoejackson.org. So yeah, check it out. Got all sorts of pictures and information, and like you said, you can become a member. We've got a podcast called My Baseball History. Just going on a couple of road trips in the next month or two to record a bunch of interviews for that it's going to drop, starting after the new year. So got some really cool stuff lined up. That, like I said, that podcast is called My Baseball History. That is on social media at Shoeless Podcast. And the website for that is shoelesspodcast.com. So all sorts of cool stuff you can check out and interact with us and stay up to date with what we're working on.
He is working. Dan is working. I can tell you that right now, and I assure you that it's the right work being put in. I will let you go with this, and this is how we're going to end it. If I called you up and I said, look, I got tickets, because you already been to the Field of Dreams game. We're going to bring that up later on, too. I want to talk to you again, and we can do a whole nother thing.
Yeah,
I want to hear about your road trips and everything. But I call you up. I say, Dan, I got Game 7 tickets. Whoever team it is, doesn't matter. I'm going to pick you up. What jersey are you going with? Doesn't matter what the team, it doesn't matter. We're just representing. We want to see what Dan's representing, what his favorite jersey is, and why.
Man, well, you didn't specify sport. So
no. It doesn't have to be a sport. It can be any sport you want. I don't care. If you broke out and said, Brock, I got a 1973 ping pong jersey that was worn in the Olympics, I'm going to ask you, what the hell is the thread count?
Yeah, I'm going with Game 7 NBA Finals somewhere, and hopefully my Bulls are in it, and I'm wearing a throwback MJ jersey. I've got a huge Michael Jordan jersey collection, over 150 pieces in it. So, yeah, I'm not sure which one I would wear. I'd probably go.
Hold on. Stop the presses real quick. Hold up. You have 150 pieces in the collection, or jerseys of Jordan?
Jerseys. Yeah, jerseys and like warm-up shirts, warm-up jackets, everything he wore from the time he was at high school at Laney in North Carolina, all the way through his Washington Wizards days, and everything in between, all-star games, the Space Jam jersey, all his baseball uniforms. I've got everything he wore.
I hate you. No, but that's great, man. That now we're definitely having a part 2, because we gotta definitely do that. And I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna throw a little teaser out there. I have a great friend of mine who lives down here, Mike Kofke. He is 22 years old. You can already probably see where I'm going with this. Huge LeBron James fan, Steph Curry fan. Like, He's literally sending me all these different pictures of LeBron James holding 1 or 2 trophies, and then you got Steph Curry doing like a finger roll or something like that. And I just bombarded him with Jordan. If anyone came to you with the question, Jordan or LeBron, first pick of your draft for your franchise, who are you taking? We already know 150 reasons why you're going to take Jordan, I believe, but that's great, man. Is there a reason behind the Michael Jordan? Obviously, the Chicago thing, growing up in that era and everything like that, but he's probably one of the greatest competitors. Let's not say athlete, competitors, point blank.
Yeah, my entire childhood was spent in front of a TV watching Michael Jordan hit game-winning shot after game-winning shot. So it was pretty hard to grow up in Chicago during that time and not be a Bulls fan. It
was pretty hard to grow up in the world and you like basketball and not to be a Bulls fan. I get it. I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, Jesus, man.
Yeah, you ask people in New York or Utah, I don't think they'd be huge Michael Jordan fans, or Indiana or Miami. You know, there's a lot of people in the world who were not really thrilled with Michael Jordan ruining their team chances of winning championships year after year. But yeah, I mean, just from the time I was a very little kid, as they say, I wanted to be like Mike. That hasn't ended. I have not grown out of that phase.
No, but good, like Mike. Bro. You're excelling. You're excelling what you're doing. Like, all jokes aside, like, look what you're doing for the standing, the life legacy of this person, of Joe. I mean, you're doing a lot, man. And I hope sometimes when you lay down and you take that deep breath, you really realize, like, you're not just putting on for you. You're just not getting a paycheck. Like, it's much more. So once again, we applaud you for that. I'll let you go. 150 pieces on Michael Jordan. That's crazy. I'm ready to try to tweet him and be like, you don't even have as many Jordan jerseys as Dan has of you, Mike. But you know what, the funny tidbit, I know you know, I still have the magazine, the last time Michael Jordan ever did anything for Sports Illustrated, when they had him swinging at that horrible curveball and it said, "Bag it, Michael." That was the last time he ever did anything. That's crazy about that too. That shows you how much of a competitor he is. He's like, you want to make fun of me? I'll make sure you'll never get another interview or exclusive from me ever again.
That's Michael.
Once again, we appreciate your time, sir. You're great. We will talk to you soon, and just much more success on everything you do. Be safe on your road trip if I don't see you before then. And you're always a friend of the Baseball with Brock community and the Real Jersey King podcast, man. You have a great day, Mr. Dan, and we love you and we appreciate you, sir.
Thanks, man. You too.